What's up guys, I'm Casey and this is eBay Miniature Rescues. This week we're going to finish off rescuing this Imperial Knight. I purchased this model not too long ago on eBay. I paid $100 for it, which I thought was a pretty good deal for a pre-assembled, painted, and based model. Now, I can tell that this was a rather quick job by the previous owner, a little bit of painting flair going on with those caution lines, but overall not the worst thing I've seen coming from eBay, and certainly a playable model. But of course this channel wouldn't be this channel if we didn't strip that paint off and try that paint job again. Just a heads up before we continue, this model will be going back up on eBay as soon as it's done. So if you're interested in supporting this channel beyond subscribing, which I really appreciate, check out the link in the description below. And thank you again for all the support guys, it really means a lot to me and just helps keep this channel going. First things first, I took off all of the panels. They came off rather easily as they were only super glued on with a few contact points. So using a little bit of pressure, they all popped right off. It's a good thing too, because the whole model didn't fit into my sonic cleaner. The panels went into a bath of LA's Totally Awesome in my sonic cleaner. It didn't take too long before the old paint started to come off, a little bit of scrubbing, and they were pretty much ready to go. I primed all of the panels using Badger Stynylrez Black. I wanted to make a majority of the armor white, so I used Stynylrez Gray to begin highlighting, and finally finishing off with titanium white ink from LIQUITEX. After the ink was dry, I hit all of the panels with Vallejo gloss varnish. That way everything was locked in and I didn't have to worry about paint coming up anytime soon. Alright, let's start with the skeleton of this knight. The good news is the paint on the skeleton wasn't terrible at all, but I wanted to fit a little more with the theme and give it a little bit of a facelift. For the majority of the work, we'll be using some cheap makeup brushes. The short stubby one will be used to buff a lot of the metallics onto the model, while the longer brush will be more of a traditional dry brush. Using Stynylrez Black Primer, I lightly went over the skeleton to just kind of give it a new base coat. That way we can work up some new metallics over that. Starting with RETRIBUTOR armor and a short brush, I'm going to cover a majority of the skeleton with gold. We want to warm up the model, but leave all the shadows pretty dark. Burnt umber through the airbrush. This will bring in more warmth into the shadows and start to give us some nice color variations in the metallics. Being a glossy ink will also maintain that metallic sheen for the model, so it's kind of a nice bonus. Next up, I'm bringing in some green and purple inks to introduce even more color. Trying to stick to the highlight points with this green gives a nice reflective look, and using purple between the burnt umber and green is a nice mix between both. Really, just putting extra colors into your metallics makes the whole thing look way more interesting. and not just your straightforward silver skeleton with a black wash. And since the panels on the knights are always the focal point, giving some extra attention to the skeleton will make the whole thing look even better. In order to tie all of our colors together, I'm going to dry brush with LEADBELCHER. The trick for this is to make sure that you dry brush from the top down. That way, the silver catches most of the raised details and gives the illusion that all of the light is coming from above. Then, bringing in some Vallejo aluminum, I'm going to hit all of the larger areas to really make them shine. Normally, I would use Vallejo metal colors for metallics, but they don't tend to dry brush all that well. Probably because they're formulated for direct airbrushing and not very heavily bodied. We need something to stick to our dry brush, so using regular model paints is much better. In order to bring out a little more detail and to weather this skeleton a little bit more, I'm going to be using some Vallejo Rust Wash. This wash is pretty subtle and preserves a good amount of the color underneath. It's nice because you can go pretty light if you want, or if you let that first layer dry and continue, it really builds up. TESTORS Black Enamel Wash is great for doing large areas of metal. It goes on a lot like an oil wash, but is pre-mixed to be really strong. It also gives you the benefits of an oil wash by allowing you to remove some with odorless mineral spirits if you want. In this case, I'm going straight out of the bottle and making some of these moving parts look like they have at least been recently oiled for its last battle. This knight might be torn up and dirty, but it still gets as much maintenance as it can. So last week I made a video about painting the shoulder pads on this knight. It details using stencils to give you a good base for some freehand work, and if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend watching that to get a little more insight into why this knight looks the way it does. I'm going to link that video at the end of this one and right here. Using the same process I showed in last week's video, I'm going to finish off the rest of the panels for this knight. Here I'm just revealing some of the stencil work on this giant chainsword. It was done in the same manner as all the other panels for this model, and then I repeated these same steps across the whole model. This was probably the most time-consuming part of this whole process, just trying to get everything to look cohesive while trying to maintain that theme. So this was a pretty big project for me. I wanted this model to have a really cool story behind it and to be something that could fit into pretty much any army, regardless of faction. Before we get to the model, I just want to let you know that this will be going up on eBay, and the price will start, as always, at the same price that I purchased the model for originally. If you are interested in supporting the channel and helping me to continue rescuing models, please check out the link in the description below. I know there are all sorts of knights out there, some really cool colors and fantastic themes, but I'm really hoping there aren't any quite like this. So there were a ton of awesome suggestions on how to paint this knight. Many of you suggested something super dirty, grimdark, or chaotic. There were also a ton of suggestions on making up my own house with colors and background. In the end, I decided to go with something pretty grimdark and with colors and backstory that you probably don't see very often. The name of this model is Arabella's Last Stand. I picked it because it represents the Sisters of Battle Order of the Sacred Rose. This knight has been through a lot. It's been through battle after battle, cutting down the forces of darkness and wiping the galaxy clean of unworthy scum. The guns are overheated and the blades are starting to dull, but this old knight has at least one battle left in her. Thank you for joining me on another eBay miniature rescue. If you like something about this video, please hit that like button. And for more rescues each week, please consider subscribing as it really helps out the channel. Once again, I'm Casey, and I will see you in the next video.